Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have 2,000 points of Imperial Guard versus Nurgle Deamons. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, I have 2,000 points, or 1,985 points of Nurgle Deamons. Now, the army list will be in the description, so I'm just going to go over the basics of this. The idea of this was, well, heavy Nurgle, but mostly to rely on, to counteract the issues. Greater demons can never hide behind cover, and they can just be dropped. So taking that to account, this is more of a deep striking force. All the dangerous stuff is going to be in deep strike, and then it's going to show up at the last moment, and it's going to rely on these feculent normals. Now these are the key things. Now, unfortunately in Tabletop Simulator these guys have round bases. In reality they have this weird abstract odd shaped base. Now these are fortifications, but because of Arks of Omen no one took them before, but now you can take them easily. Fortifications have interesting rules, but these ones are very interesting. These ones in the setup phase can be deployed anywhere on the battlefield that's more than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone and enemy units, which essentially means these are forwarding troops. However, because they're fortifications, they can't hold points, they can't do actions, but they're useful for the warp storm rules and stuff that is a part of the demons, so they can function as warp locuses, so my guys can teleport next to them, as well as do demonic aura and stuff like that. And so yeah. And apart from that, they are key units, and the Great Unclean ones and the Beasts of Nurgle will be deep striking in. And so for my Warlord, my Great Unclean one, the first one, is going to be a melee type. The only thing special about him is that he has, he basically has Corruption and Vile Touch, which is Warlord trait Vile Touch. If he hits, he wounds automatically. And Corruption is, it takes a choice of his weapons. He's going to have it as his Bilesword, increases its damage by 1, and it ignores any damage reduction rules. So he's very powerful in close combat, and his special Warlord trait, or not, Revoltingly Resilient, it's a thing you can give to Great Unclean ones. He has -1 damage, so he's a melee guy. The other one is also very strong in melee, but he has support spells, so he'll give +1 toughness, or no, +1 damage to my guys and -1 toughness to everyone else. As well as he has the relic weapon, the Effluvior, which is basically, it is a ranged weapon that has a lot of shots, and all damage is carried over to the next model, so it does a lot. And his aura thingy that he has is Hideous Visage, so -1 leadership and -1 to their combat attrition tests. So he's going to be trying to make everyone run away. As for troops, I have the 3 compulsory Plague Bearers. They're okay, decent, nothing special. And then 2 units of Nurgling Swarms for either holding the front or keeping away enemies. And then I have Elites, which is 2 units of Beasts of Nurgle, 2 units of 2. Then I have 3 units of Plague Drones, which will not load no matter what I do. So basically these are fast mobile units, very strong, very decent, very strategically valuable, essentially. And then of course the feculent normals. And this army is mostly going to run on me trying to outplay my opponent and beat them to death. So that is 2,000 points of Nurgle Demon.
Alright you guys, so for my 2,000 points of Imperial Guard, this is my first time playing them, so there's kind of a lot of elements I wanted to try and balance and kind of see how it worked out. And so since the list is below, I'm just going to kind of walk through the main idea. But essentially I wanted a core kind of blob of fire, which is all my troops, to be buffed by my 2 HQs. Now there's a little mini codex that came out for the Inquisition and Assassins, so I wanted to try one of them as well. And since I knew we were playing demons, I don't usually like to tailor lists, but I figure if I'm throwing in an Inquisitor, he might as well be in the right ordo. And then I wanted to try and have my main blob of gunfire balanced by more faster moving side things, and then bolstered by heavy shooting and support. And so I wanted to try and have like a really kind of balanced guard list. I don't know if it's going to work out that way, because I've never played them before again. But so that's my idea here with the Imperial Guard, and I've always wanted to take a Shadow Sword, well, not a Shadow Sword specifically, but a Baneblade type vehicle. So I'm excited to finally, after I don't even know how many years, to finally be able to do that. And so that's kind of the idea. Really just kind of have an anchor point and then just do some flanking with heavy fire support. And so we'll see how that works out. And that is my 2,000 points.
Alright, so for today, our mission is Abandoned Sanctuaries, which is Control 1, Control 2, Control More. And the secondary objective is we score 2 points at the end of our turn, or 3 points if we complete both of these objectives, which is control the objective marker in the center of the battlefield, or we destroy at least one enemy unit that's within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield at that turn. And that is the mission. Alright, so for today, for secondaries for the demons, I'm going all demons. Nourished by terror, reality rebels, destroy the spoiler of reality. Essentially, take the objectives and kill everything. That's basically it. So nourished by terror. Enemy flees, I get a point. Since he's guard, he has low leadership. That's very likely, especially when I have a character that specifically helps get that. So this is very likely if he can survive for like 1 or 2 turns. Next thing is reality rebels. Basically, this is like engage in all fronts, but better and easier. And so the spoilers of reality is do actions on objectives in the center. There's only 3, so I might have a chance to do that. So we'll see what happens. And those are my secondaries.
Yes, so mine are all guard secondaries as well. I don't know if Inflexible Command I'll be able to do much with, but we'll see. So by Lasgun and Bayonet, basically I get a victory point every time I kill a unit that is within range of an objective marker from, obviously, by an Astra Militarum unit. Then Inflexible Command. At the end of my turn, I get 2 victory points if every platoon infantry unit from my army is within 6 inches of a friendly officer. 1 victory point if every squadron unit from my army is within 12 inches of an officer. And I get 2 victory points if any enemy units were destroyed by an Astra Militarum unit from my army that was under the effect of orders. And then boots on the ground, I get a victory point for each table quarter that has 1 or more platoon infantry unit from my army wholly within it. And then 1 victory point if 1 or more regimental standard units from my army are either wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield or wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. And so that is my secondaries.
Alright, so for deployment for the demons, got Defender, so got to deploy the thing first. And so I set up the Feculent Gnarlmaws taking each objective. Now they can't hold the objective, they can't do actions, but they can also block, like basically line of sight, and they can also block movement. And so they have a 3-up invulnerable save to shooting. So they're pretty tough and cheap. So essentially I put them to be in places where they would block movement, line of sight, but also be able to screw over my opponent should anything like that happen. And also to fulfill their purposes as warp locusts. So that'll be good. Apart from that, then I placed all my guys hiding behind the terrain and stuff. Plague Bearers on center to be able to push out towards center and also hold the back line if need be, and some on the side. And that's basically the entire plan of my deployment. My Great Unclean ones and my Beasts of Nurgle are in reserves to be able to do stuff. Oh, and my Nurglings are up front to do actions. And that is all my deployment.
Yeah, so for mine, I wasn't quite sure exactly how to pull this one off because I had so many units. So basically, I started with 2 balanced bubbles around the characters, and then I started to spread out with the fast attacks and the elites, and then the heavy supports, kind of just uneven spread because I had so many units. And my Tempestus Scions are in Deep Strike, or I don't know what it's called. Each army is different. They're aerial drop. They are aerially dropping. And then I put the Shadow Sword just right in the middle because he's a big boy and he takes up almost an entire chunk of the deployment zone by himself. So I wasn't really trying to counter him. Not that the units he has on the field are much of anything anyway. I assume his main damage is going to be the stuff that pops up out of nowhere. So yeah, so I wasn't really trying to counter anything. I was just kind of trying to pocket around my characters, and we'll see how that works out for me.
Alright, so for who goes first or second, if Nurgle Deamons, if I go first, essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to rush forward and rapidly do my secondaries without any real trouble. My Nurgling are going to be able to do it. I'm going to position my Plague Drones at the right spots to counter any of your deep strikes. Plague Bearers are going to move forward. If I go second, it's not going to be as beneficial. Some of my guys are going to get shot up. As far as doing my secondaries, I have to wait a whole turn. So if I go first, there's no way you can interrupt me. If I go second, there's a good chance you can. So overall, I see it as that I really need to go first for the overall state of the game. What about you?
Yeah, so I think I also need to go first here. It'll give me a chance to knock out some of your stuff and also give me a better kind of position on the map. I don't know if I want to be too aggressive, but I have a lot of shooting and it needs to shoot. Going second, I'll probably have more targets to shoot at that rate, but it'll probably not be convenient for me. But I'm not quite sure how. I think deep strikers will be kind of a problem. But yeah, so I think going first is better. Going second is not bad. But we'll see. It's kind of hard to gauge. I've never really played the guard. I kind of assume a shooting army should probably go, in this case, first. So yeah, I don't know.
All right, let's see what happens.
Oh shoot!
Are you freaking kidding me?
What did you roll? You rolled a 1 2?
This thing is a wall. 4.
I got a 5.
All right. Imperial Guard turn 1. Yeah.
All right, you guys. So for my command phase and movement phase. So command phase, I started off with prefectus orders from the commissar. So he used remain vigilant on all the infantry in his bubble, and that includes the ordnance team, which gives them a 12-inch bubble of no reinforcements. So that's more against him. But also they can hold steady, and basically that gives them overwatch on a 5-up. So that's nifty, because that might help them. It might not, who knows. But that's only if they get charged. He's Nurgle, so I don't know what the chances of that even happening are. But then he also did, because he's able to do 2 orders because of the Warlord trait, he was able to do a regimental order on my Rough Riders, which he did fixed bayonets. So they basically get +1 to hit and AP in melee. And then Ursula Creed, command phase wise, did take aim, which is basically the same thing as fixed bayonets, except it's for shooting, and it hit all the infantry that was near her, including the heavy weapons team. And so that was nice. She could do 2 more orders, but there wasn't really anything else for her to do that I could think of. That might have been a mistake, but here we are. And then moving into the movement phase, the Rough Riders move forward because they are melee and they are fast. And then my infantry on your top left, so my Cassikerns and my Blue Shock Troop Squad kind of moved a little bit more to the forward. My ordnance team kind of moved out of from behind cover a little bit because they have a pretty short movement range, so they weren't able to go very far. And then my purple shock troopers kind of scooted around a little bit, but my Death Corps stayed still because I don't want to move too far forward just yet. That's not necessarily what happened on the other side, but then my Shadow Sword moved into cover, essentially. And that way it doesn't bother him with his shooting, and hopefully he will be able to melt many, many things. Then my guardsmen, my only regular infantry squad, just moved out from cover onto the objective, so that way they can shoot things, and that's That's the only reason. It's probably actually a bad idea, but I wanted to use the heavy weapon, so here we are. And then instead of playing it safe, my Catachans basically just moved up. They didn't run because I wanted them to shoot, and then Inquisitor Kotiaz snuggled up with them, moving forward. He's gonna have a harder charge, but not by much. My green shock troop squad kind of scooted around to the side, and Ursula moved forward a little bit. My heavy weapons team actually stayed still. They're the only thing that didn't actually move besides my Death Corps. Then my armored sentinels moved forward. They only have an 8-inch move, which kind of surprised me. I probably could have run them since they're no, they wouldn't have been able to shoot. Never mind. And then my Cassicarns behind them walked forward as well. And that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so I actually forgot that Kotiaz has psychic powers. So he used his new Ordo Malleus specific psychic power, which basically gives an Imperium infantry or biker unit within 12 inches a 5-up invuln. So I gave it to the Catachans because they are also the unit that is protecting him. So I'm hoping that that will help them live. And that was it for the psychic phase, really. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, a lot happened, or a lot was done, but not a lot happened. My Rough Riders, my yellow Cassicarns, my blue shock troops, and my purple shock troops all shot at this Feculent Gnarl all the way on the left, taking it down to 3 wounds, so that was kind of nice. But obviously it's not dead. And then my ordnance team in the back shot at his plague bearers, and it looks like they didn't do
nothing.
anything.
Yeah, they didn't do anything.
I can't remember if that was a bad wound roll or you just saved
Well,
it.
part of it also is because I spent 3 warp storm points to make it so all enemy units 12 inches away have -1 to hit me in shooting. So that was the thing.
Yes, that is also part of it. So kind of a big L on shooting on the left side. Moving towards the middle, my guardsman squad, my base infantry squad, shot at his Feculent Gnarl. They did 0 damage. Although thinking about it, I don't think I shot with a heavy bolter, but that's not super relevant, I guess, for the moment. Auto Sword shot at it as well, and did total to it. So my Volcano Cannon didn't roll super well on the hits. And then one went through, but he used a command point to re-roll it. And saved it. Because it's a flat 12 damage for that gun, so it would have just melted the tree instantly. Then he shot his last cannons and his heavy bolters. I think it was the heavy bolters that actually did the 4 damage.
Yeah, because he had 30 heavy bolter shots, and 2 of those went through because I have a 3-up invulnerable save. And the last cannons he fired, a bunch of them missed, 2 rolled 1s to wound, and so only 1 went through, and I saved that. So it's just like, these 75-point trees are ridiculously tough.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard because with invuln, like, they're demon saves, but they're invulns, like, nothing could really shift that, and so it's really just up to his rolling, which could be anything. The Catachans then shot at the blue tree, as did Kotiaz, the green shock troopers, the heavy weapons team. They all shot at the blue tree, taking it down to 4 wounds left. Then my armored sentinel shot at his Nurglings, doing 3 damage, leaving 1 left alive. And then my red Cassicarn squad shot at his blue tree, and I believe they did nothing. I can't really remember. The turn was drawn out for so long, so all the rolling, so it's hard to remember exactly who did what, but it ended with 4 wounds left. And that was the shooting phase.
Oh, he also had the scout sentinels or armored sentinels fire at the Nurglings. They didn't kill any of them. They only did 3 wounds. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, yeah. All right. And
yeah,
that was...
you passed 1 of their saves. So I did exactly 4 wounds, and then he saved 1 of them. So there's 1 left alive. I might send the sentinels in to step on them. I'm not sure yet. Alright, you guys, so for the charge phase, my Rough Riders went into his Narma tree right ahead of them. They rolled an 8, so they got in no problem, and I assume they're going to beat it to death because that's just my assumption. I don't know. I don't actually know.
Spent your entire turn
my-
beating up trees, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Take a whole turn just to chop some trees down. Then the Catachans, who are very familiar with chopping trees down, are charged the middle tree. I was hoping they would all get shot off. That's not the case. So now I'm going to try and finish them off before his other stuff can just deep strike right next to my stuff. And so they got in. They needed like a 6 or a 7 maybe, but they got in. And so hopefully they will do the wounds, because they need quite a few and it's toughness 7, so I don't know how that's going to go. But anyway. And then TTS charged the blue tree. Now, he actually failed his initial charge, so I used a command point to re-roll it, and he got in with a 9. So I snuggled him up right next to the objective. Not that he's on it, but... and so hopefully he'll be able to clean off that objective. I did not charge my sentinels in, because I didn't want to necessarily entangle them. So yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so because he doesn't really have attacks, I just started right from left. So TTS swung on the blue Narmal. Now originally he actually killed it, so 2 wounds went through, because he had full rerolls to hit and wound. But he used his command point reroll to reroll one of the saves. So only 1 wound actually went through, keeping the tree alive with 1 wound. Then the Catachan swung on the middle tree and they did nothing. They had a bunch of attacks actually go through, but then no actual wounds. So it's kind of a waste of time. And then the Rough Riders were actually able to, with just the 2 gold lances, were able to kill off the tree just fine. And so that died. They consolidated into the Nurglings, and the Nurglings swung on them and did 2 damage, because I failed both of the saves, and one Rough Rider died. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for secondaries, Abandoned Sanctuaries, so my troops, so the Catachans, are objective secured, so I actually hold the middle objective. And so I got 2 points there. They could have destroyed an enemy unit to the middle, but they did not by a long shot. And then by Lasgun and Bayonet, I killed one of his trees, and it was on an objective, so I got a point there. Inflexible Command, I killed a unit from a unit that was under the effect of orders, so I got 2 points there. And then Boots on the Ground, I got 2 points for having a unit in my 2 table quarters, so 1 point for each table quarter. My Rough Riders aren't all the way into this other table quarter, so that's why I only got 2 points, not 3 points. And that is my points.
Alright, so for command phase and movement, so in the command phase, the trees swing on whoever's nearby with an ability, but I did that after my movement because I just wanted to focus on movement. But it's supposed to be done first, but... So Plague Bearers on the left moved up. Plague Bearers in the center ran. They failed that, I re-rolled it, and they got 1 better, so they're now touching the objective, but it's not good enough. And then basically I had those Plague Bearers move up. I had all the Plague Drones move. The green Plague Drones ran, barely did anything. Blue ones are where they are. They're flying, so they can easily move through terrain and stuff. Nurglings move a little bit to the side. And so the trees swung. Basically how they swing is in the command phase, any enemies that they're nearby, they roll a dice. On a 2 through 5, they deal 1 mortal wound. On a 6, they do a d3. So the one facing TTS rolled 6, and so did 2 mortal wounds to him. Then the green one in the middle did 1 mortal wound to the Jungle Fighters and killed 1, which actually gives me a Warp Storm point, bringing me to 5 Warp Storm points. And that is the movement and command phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, on the left, the Plague Bearers charged his Rough Riders, the red ones. They rolled a 4 and just barely made it. Then on the right, the blue Plague Drones charged his, whatever the Jungle Fighters are. And so they needed a 6, they failed that, so they rolled a 11 when I re-rolled it, and they were able to successfully make it in. And that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the fight phase, a few things first to note is that cut out the Nurgling Swarms also charged as well afterwards, forgot to notice that, and also the plague drones. So where they charged, they couldn't actually touch them because of the 0.5. They couldn't get within 0.5 because of the wall. But because they rolled so high, they were able to charge on the opposite side and touch the jungle fighters. And so, just so FYI. So on the left, the plague bears swung onto the rough riders and successfully killed 4 of them, dealing 8 wounds. Their weapons auto wound on at 6. So did some good casualties there. After that, then, the Nurgling Swarms swung on Kotiaz, did absolutely nothing. They did a bunch of wounds to him, but he has a 2-up armor save. Then the Plague Drones in the center swung, and they did terrible. They did 2 wounds. Well, 3 wounds, actually, but they have a 5-up invuln save from the ward that the Kotiaz gave him. So that happened, with all their attacks and stuff. So after that, then, as on my tree, he missed once, he did 3 wounds, I rolled, it's a 50-50, I made 2 of the saves, the tree would have died, so I spent my last CP to re-roll it. It was a 50-50, and I rolled a 6, the tree lives. And yeah. Oh, and he rolled a bunch of attacks with his jungle fighters against my feculent Gnarlmaw in the middle, and did a wound to it, I believe. And that was the entirety of the fight phase. Oh, he also wiped out my Nurglings on the left with his Rough Riders. He focused all his attacks on it, so they're dead. Alright, so for morale phase, mostly my opponent. So one of the big things is I spent 5 Warp Storm points, because I gained 1 from earlier, to heal my entire army. So both my trees, my green one healed 2 wounds, and my blue one healed 3 wounds. So green is up to 6, blue is up to 4, healed back to full, the ones that are surviving. And so, as it stands right now, as it stands, morale phase on the left, so he would have to roll a 1 and 2, but he passed it. He auto-passed it with 2 points for his CP to make the Rough Rider stay, and with his Catachan Jungle Fighters, so because he's next to Demons, he has -1 to his leadership, so they had leadership 6, and they lost 3 guys, they should have lost more, so he needed to roll a 1 and 2 there, and he passed. He rolled a 1, so that was disappointing. I wanted more kills because I gain victory points for every model that flees. I just need 15 to flee. And and that was my turn. Alright, so for my turn, I do not have the center. I do not have control of the center because he has 4 OBSEC models on it and I have 1. Nourished by Terror, no one fled. Reality rebels. I have a model unit wholly within the center, Plague Drones, and I have demons in 2 other table quarters. Then the Spoilers of Reality, I wasn't able to do at all, so because I didn't get the first turn, and that was it.
Alright, you guys, so in the command phase, my Commissar gave the blue squad the Prefectus order forward through the Emperor. So basically, they can move and shoot, and then up until the shooting phase, they'll count as having remained stationary. So that's why all of that whole section just ran, because they're basically going to be able to shoot like nothing happened. And then, moving over to the left side... Yes, the left side. Kotiaz left combat. My Armored Sentinels and my red Cassacurns move forward. My green Cadians move forward as with Ursula. My heavy weapons team actually stayed still. My Catachans in the middle left combat, but they're still hugging the ring of the objective, so they're still actually holding the objective. They're just, not in combat anymore. And then my middle guardsman squad just moved up just a hair, just to get on the objective, or just to, get a little closer. And that was the movement phase. I actually forgot to... All right, you guys, so a lot of stuff happened, but not really at the same time, once again. So my Rough Riders, so I used the Stratagem Fainting Strike, so they were able to fall back and shoot and charge, which we'll deal with in a moment. But so they shot, I don't think they may have done 1 wound to the Plague Bearers, and then my Death Corps, my Cassacurn, and then my blue and purple shock troops all shot at the Plague Bearers as well, taking them from a squad of 10 to probably a squad of 4. My ordnance team actually shot at his feculent Gnarlmaw. I think
nothing.
They did damage. I think 1 wound went through.
Oh yeah, 1 went through.
Yeah. And then my infantry squad, so the guardsman with the heavy bolter, shot at his plague drones, and they actually killed one. They did exactly 5 wounds. It was very surprising. And so they were able to do that. Then I shot with my shadow sword at his tree yet again, and it actually did nothing to it. So he saved all the volcano cannon shots and all the last cannon shots. So it's still alive with 4 wounds, and then he shot his 5 twin heavy bolters at the plague drones and did like 16 damage. It just cleared the squad. And then over here, I say over here, but towards the right, I shot with Ursula Creed at the tree. She did 2 damage to it, leaving it with 2 damage. Then I shot my las cannons at it, for my heavy weapons team, so all 3 las cannons, they were unable to do anything. So then I shot my green squad. No, who did I shoot next at it? The Sentinels at it, and they shot and they killed it.
Yeah,
it was the Sentinels that killed it, right?
Use a reroll to save it from like from the last cannon and stuff. So
that's right. Okay, so they did end it. Well, it still failed, but anyway. And then the red squad shot at the Nurgling Swarms, and I'm just now thinking that this green squad actually hasn't shot.
No, they did. They shot at him with Ursula and everything.
Oh, they also shot at the tree?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, yeah. And then my Tempestus Scions dropped in, and they shot at his Plague Bearers. Looks like they did a whole 4 damage to it. So that was not great. But that was the shooting phase. So I killed 1 more tree. Yeah.
1 per turn. Yeah.
And, yep, that was it. So basically for the charge phase, my Rough Riders charged his Plague Bearers, the red squad, to kind of clear off that section. And then the Tempestus Scions actually tried to make a move for it, but they failed. So they did not do that. And that was my charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for the fight phase, my Rough Riders swung. I swung with my Goad Lances first, and they were able to kill 2 off. I rolled pretty good on the hits, but the wounds not so great. So that killed off 2, which was half the squad. And then the 3 with the Hunting Lances, I used the Frag Tip, and that actually it took the rest of the squad. So 7 wounds, I think, went through, because every successful hit adds an additional 2 hits. So it went from 5 hits to 15 hits, and then that narrowed down to like 7 or 8 wounds, which wiped the rest of the squad. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I did pretty good this turn, so I have hold more, so I got 3 full things on the primary. Abandoned Sanctuaries, I still control the middle of the battlefield, just because my Catachans are still alive and they're hugging the edge of the objective. We'll see what happens in the next turn, but so I got 2 points for Abandoned Sanctuaries. I killed his tree, which was on an objective, so I got 1 point there. Inflexible Command, the unit that killed it was under order, so I got a point there. And then Boots on the Ground, I have a unit in 3 table quarters. And so that gave me 3 points, and so this turn was actually pretty good on points. But again, his real heavy hitters haven't quite come in yet, so we'll see kind of how that turns things around, or if it even does, next turn.
Alright, so for movement phase, for my second turn, not ideal, but I'm trying to play the best I can. So, green squad moved up to the center, got within range of a lot of things. So I spent my 3 Warp Storm points, and essentially what they were going to do is that basically everyone that's affected by Demonic Terror, which subtracts their leadership by 1, now subtracts it by an additional 1, so everyone's at -2, which will aid in my deep striking. And so I moved everything up. So I moved my green squad up the middle to deal with jungle fighters, but also tagging the Land Raider, or whatever it is. Baneblade, yeah. My drones moved up, my Nurgling Swarm moved up, my red drones ran, got a 5, got very close, and tagged basically all the others within a 6-inch range, subtracted their leadership by 2. My plague-ridden squad on the bottom extended out to tag the Tempestus Scions. So we'll see how that goes. And so we'll see how these creatures do. A bit of a sacrifice, but I'll figure things out how this works. And then finally, my Great Unclean one deep strike the support one, not the melee one. This one is very key because of essentially what he does. He might be able to get me some good leadership buffs, and he's out of line of sight from the Shadow Sword. And the red one, the melee one, will finally be able to will come in another time, because I think the battlefield is going to clear up very well for him. Alright, so for the psychic phase, my Great Unclean one casts Smite on Inquisitor Kotias. It fails, I re-roll it. It goes through on a 6. He dispels it on like a 9 or something. Then I cast -1 toughness on the Armored Sentinels, and that fails to go off. And that was the psychic phase. Alright, so for the shooting phase, on the right side I had the Plague Drones. The green Plague Drones fired at the red squad of Kasserkin. Or Karskin, whatever you say. Kasserkin. Yeah, it is Kasserkin. And so they use Death Heads, which is a blast. So because he has had 10 guys, I at least rolled 3 for each. So I got full shots of 9. A bunch of hits went through. It's AP -2. He failed 4. Actually, he failed all his saves. But those are the wounds that went through. So 4 died. Then the Great Unclean one, the support one, with his relic weapon, he split fired. So his Effluvior relic fired at the squad that was up above, and has 3d3 shots. Got 8 shots. Needed 2s. Hit. One failed to hit. 1 failed to wound. And these were 3 damage each. And the relic weapon's ability is that the damage bleeds over. And so basically 6 went through, so that was 18 wounds done to the squad in total. So the whole squad was wiped. Then he did his spit attack against the Inquisitor Kotias, and did enough to kill him, but my opponent re-rolled it and saved him. And so he lives. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, so I had a very big, just as planned, well, not really just as planned, but just a bunch of really lucky rolls, but like, this was the culmination of everything. Spring him in a trap because I have slow-moving units. So essentially what happened was I charged with everything, and everything made it in. So Plague Bearers made it into the Jungle Fighters up top, or in the center. Then my Nurglings made it against the Karskin on the right. The Plague Drones charged Inquisitor Kotias on the right. My Green Beasts of Nurgle charged the Rough Riders, but they got a 12. So I just booked them way over. I could have charged both them and the Tempestus, but they're in with the Rough Riders. And then the Red Beasts of Nurgle charged the Death Troops up there. They could reach. They made it on an 8. They needed no, they didn't need an 8. They needed a 5 actually. Then my Great Unclean one charged Ursula Creed. Needed an 8. Rolled an 8 exactly. And I decided not to charge for the Plague Bearers on the bottom because I need that point for controlling points. Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so for the fight phase, this is the big swing, maybe. So he could stay on erupt. So on the left, the Green Beasts of Nurgle swung. So if they hit 6s to hit with them, cause 2 mortal wounds, and the attack sequence ends. So they did 4 mortal wounds, and they did 3 wounds, and these were AP -2, 2 damage each. He needed 6s. He rolled all 6s. That would have been the squad. And so he lost 2 guys because of the mortal wounds. That was disappointing. Then he interrupted with Kodiaz, who swung on the Plague Drones, and he successfully killed one and did 3 damage to another. Then I was free reign, so the Plague Drone swung back, did 1 wound to him. He died. Yeah, these guys they're disappointing in damage. Do 1 or 2 wounds. Then the Nurglings swung on the Karsukin, and they killed like 3 of them. So there's only 4 left in the squad. After that, in the center, the Plague Bearers wiped out the Katachan, but they stayed on the objective and didn't try to tag the Shadow Sword because he has 9 attacks. So, been terrible, and he would have been still being able to shoot them anyway. And then the Beasts of Nurgle Red swung on the Deathcore troops and killed 7 of them. And since the combat phase ended, they heal to full at the end of every phase that they take damage in. So actually that was kind of pointless for you to overwatch them when they charged. So, and then I forgot about that too. It was every phase. And then after that, his Armored Sentinels, who I tagged with my Plague Drone, swung, did absolutely nothing. But his Karsukin swung on my Nurglings and killed one and almost killed the other one. It's down to 1, but I still hold the objective. And that was the turn. Oh yeah, and my Great Unclean one completely squished Ursula entirely, and I gained a victory point for her fleeing and failing. Basically, Nourished by Terra, roll 2d6 every time a unit dies, and compare it to its leadership at that point. And I rolled well over her leadership, so I gained another victory point for that, and he consolidated towards his Shadow Sword and stuff, which was the nearest enemy. And that was the fight phase. Oh, and he killed one of my green Beasts of Nurgle with his stupid Rough Riders. It's ridiculous. They exactly did enough wounds to kill it. Alright, so for the morale phase, it was a big deal because of all the buffs and stuff. So first he had his Death Core troopers that was facing my Beast of Nurgle. He rolled, he needed anything but, he rolled a 1. And because of like Commissar and Death Krieg stuff, he didn't have to take attrition tests, which would have been horrible for him. So I gained 1 victory point for the guy who fled. Then his Rough Riders rolled. They needed a 1, 2, or 3, and he rolled that. Then I needed a... then over on the side, his Kasukins fighting my Nurglings rolled. He needed anything but. He failed that. And so when 1 fled, I gained a point. And so here's how it works. So because he's under half, he needs 1s and 2s. They flee. But because he's also under the effect of demonic terror, it's an additional -1. So really, he needs 1, 2s, and 3s. They flee. And so he rolled 2 3s, and so 2 other Kasukin left, and I gained 2 more points from that. And that was the morale phase. Alright, so for points, I controlled 1, I controlled 2. I had the center, so I got Abandoned Sanctuaries. Nourished by Terror, I gained 5 points in total this turn from Nourished by Terror. Reality Rebels, I have the center, and I have 3 Table Quarters, so 4 points there. I have got nothing on the Spoilers of Reality. That first turn really got me. And that's how it is so far.
Alright, you guys, so for command phase, I only have my Commissar left, so he gave a Prefectus order, get back into the fight for the Death Corps troopers, which basically means they can fall back and shoot. And then he put it on the Purple Squad, but he put a Regimental order, which was Take Aim, Blue, Purple, and the Ordnance team. So they all got +1 to hit there, so that was nice. And then in the movement, the Yellow Squad moved to really just kind of cement the objective, but the Blue and Purple Squad kind of spread out, as did the Commissar, just to kind of avoid any potential entanglements. The Las Cannon, the Heavy Weapons team on the top right corner, kind of just moved a little to get a better angle on things, so whether it's the tree or the Great Unclean one. And then that was honestly really it. Oh, the Militarum Tempestus moved closer towards the objective, and also the Plague Bear squad. And that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the shooting phase, I'm not sure what actually happened. The Death Corps shot at his Beast of Nurgle, and because they just have 2 melted guns, so they were actually able to kill 1. And then the Purple Squad and the Blue Squad shot at the surviving Plague Beast of Nurgle, and they were able to take him out. Then the Yellow Squad shot at his Plague Drones, and they killed 1. Yes, they killed 1. And then I believe I actually jumped around from there because I couldn't decide what to do. So the Guardsmen shot at the Plague Bearers, and they killed 1. And then my Armored Sentinel shot at his Plague Drones, and they did nothing. They all missed. And then I came back around, and I shot the Ordnance team at the Plague Drone, and they killed 1 more, so his Red Squad there. So that was something. And then I shot my last cannons at his Great Unclean one. They did nothing. And then I put everything from the Shadow Sword into the Great Unclean one, and he did 15 wounds, I think. something like that. He went from 22 to 8.
Yeah.
So whatever that math is. And then, the Tempestus Scions, I forgot they actually shot because they did 1 wound with their guns. So I'm not liking them right now. But anyway, so that was the shooting phase.
So, alright, start the clock when you're ready. Camera's going.
Yep, so 3, 2,
It's
1.
already going.
Yeah, alright, so basically I'm just gonna swing on this guy with my guys. So I have, these dice are really giving me a hard time. So they need 3s. So that's 2 more attacks. Come on. Yeah. And they need
Toughness 6.
3s.
You're hitting with strength 7?
The goad lances are.
Okay,
So
but
the 2 guys with goad lances are
Yeah, but
swinging with...
yeah, it's +2 to your strength 4. That's 6.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then yeah. So
Okay.
that's a bunch of garbage. So 3. These
5.
are 2 damage each.
He takes.
So he takes 4 damage.
Okay.
And then the 2 swings from the other guy. He's gonna use his Melta-Tip. So 1 hit. Oh my gosh. So 1 wound. This is 3 damage.
He dies.
He's dead. They're gonna consolidate 3 inches this way. Then it's your pick.
Ah, caster. Over here. Nurgling swing. 1. 1. That's it.
4 out.
He dies.
Yes, we can. Why?
On it, I get a victory point for his fleeing, or for dying, because I beat his leadership. Your swings.
Yeah, I think it's just these guys now.
Yeah.
They have 2 attacks each, so that's 6 attacks. They hit on 4s. And 4s, because they're strength 6, of course. Alright. Swings back.
Yeah, so might as well pile. Okay. Looks like it's your last turn. So 5 attacks. Auto wound. Strength.
I think they're toughness 6 as well.
Strength 5. So yeah, so 3 at -2. 1 damage each.
What was it?
3 at -2.
Right. So 5s. Wow.
Oof. First time we've had a clock out, which means you can't play anymore. Alright, and then Foul Mouth Parts is the thing, the creatures. 4 attacks, because it's 2 each. So 4s. And strength 5, so 5s. 1 at -2, 2 damage.
1 at -2, so 5s again. No.
1 takes 2 damage. Oh my gosh. Alright. And that is it for fight phase.
Yep.
Alright, you guys, so I had hold 1, hold 2 for points, primaries. I don't have anyone in the middle, so I didn't get that. I wiped out the 2 Beasts of Nurgle units that were on near the objective, so I got points for that. Inflexible Command, the units that killed it were all under orders, so I got a point there. And then Boots on the Ground in the table quarters, I have 3 points for that. So not a terrible turn points-wise, but it's definitely starting to slow down a little bit. So yeah.
Alright, movement phase. Shifting, the Plague Drone moved south to deal with the Tempestus Scions. Blue Plague Bearers moved in to intercept. Nurgling Swarm ran into the middle of the side objective. Plague Bearers moved off to the side. While the Great Unclean one finally spawns in, the other Green Unclean one moves up. And that's it. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, first, Red Great Unclean one cast Stream of Corruption, which is a D3 mortal wounds on a target, and did it on the vehicle, did 1 mortal wound. Then he cast Smite on it, and did 3 mortal wounds. Then the Great Unclean one on the side, the green one, cast Shrivelling Pox, which reduces its toughness by 1, failed it. Then he cast +1 damage on the Great Unclean one, the other one, and that failed as well. So, alright, so for the shooting phase, not much. The Plague Bringer on the bottom fired at the Tempestus Scions, killed 1. The Great Unclean one, green, split fired. He did his Spit on the Guardsman and his Effluvior, whatever, on the Shadow Sword. And so he did 1 wound to the guardsman, killed 1, and he did 3 wounds to the Shadow Sword. The Shadow Sword, it's only surviving well because of its toughness 9. Great Unclean One on the bottom fired his ranged attack at the guardsman and killed 3 of them. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, so overview. So for charges, Red Glade Unclean One charged the thing. So I used 2 of my Warp Storm points to make it so the otherworldly tread, so I'm not affected by movement or any charge. So I was able to easily charge the Shadow Sword. Then the Green Great Unclean One, I thought he could fit in. It turns out he couldn't. I wanted him to multi-charge, but my opponent let me redo it. So he just charged the 2 guys on the side there, sadly. Then after that, the Plague Drone at the bottom charged the Tempestus Signs, made it in. The Plague Bearers charged partially just to get some damage in there, making a Congo line. Then what happened is, I forgot to mention this, like they all were able to do it, but the Nurgling Swarm and the Plague Bearers were doing the my secondary objective on the 2 objectives there since no one's touching it. And that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the combat phase, first, Great Unclean One, the red one swung, and so because of his Warlord trait, if he hits, he automatically wounds, and so I went with the power strength attacks, and so 4 of his attacks went through. My opponent re-rolled 1 of his saves. It failed, so the 4 that went through did 14 damage because it's d6 each, and because the relic makes it plus 1 damage each, did a total of 18 damage. It's still alive. Then the green Great and then his Nurgling swung. Because of the Warlord trait, they auto wound on a hit, but he had a 2-up armor save. So then the green Great Unclean One swung on the squad and used his multi-attack, so basically had 12 attacks, and killed them all. He did not consolidate. Then after that, the Plague Bringer on the bottom, Plague Drone, swung, killed 1 guy. Then the Plague Bearer swung and killed like 1 guy. Then my swung did nothing. His Armored Sentinel swung, did 1 wound to my Plague Drones. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I controlled 1, controlled 2, controlled more. I have the center at the end of the turn. Nourished by Terror, he had a bunch of guys flee. We didn't show it, but his Tempestus Signs on the bottom failed a morale check, so I gained a point, and he rolled 3 1s. So I gained 4 more points by Nourished by Terror. Reality Rebels, I only have the center, because I have to have not only guys wholly within the table quarters, but also I have to have more demon units than he does in them. So, and to Spoilers of Reality, I have 2 units doing the objectives on the side. Let's see if they survive long enough, and it's looking good for me.
Alright, you guys, so for command phase, the Commissar just gave Take Aim to the purple squad, which within 6 inches was able to give it to the entirety of that bubble. So the Death Corps, the blue squad, the yellow squad, the purple squad, and the ordnance team before they all started moving on. And that was it for the command phase. So movement phase, my Rough Riders moved towards the bottom of the map to help my pathetic Tempestus Scions. The yellow squad moved, they secured the objective, but also secured that table quarter. And then my Death Corps, my blue squad, my Commissar, my purple squad all started moving towards the middle. My Sentinels left combat because they're not really doing anything there. And my Shadow Sword actually stayed in combat. So I was trying to find rules for Titanic units because I remember seeing so many different rules at different points, but I actually couldn't find anything. So I don't think Titanic units can actually leave combat and shoot naturally. If I'm wrong on that one, let me know, because I'm not sure at all. And yeah, so that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, it was actually a pretty small turn, now that we're on the tail end of the game. Actually, I don't even know what shot. Okay, so my ordnance team shot at his Great Unclean One, the heavily damaged one. They did 4 damage to it, leaving it with 2 wounds left. And then my heavy weapons team shot their last cannons at his Plague Bringers. They killed 1 and they did 2 damage to the other. And then my Shadow Sword shot, it split its gun, so its main turret because with the guard, their turret weapons can shoot at enemies not in combat. But because it's blast, I can't shoot it at the one he's actually in combat with, I believe. So I shot it at the other Great Unclean one. I rolled 1-6, so it auto-wounded because of the I guess, Orange Soldiers army rule. Yeah. She failed the save, so that would have killed it, but he used his last command point and saved it.
So far, the Volcano Cannon has killed nothing.
Yeah, it's been a huge waste.
But cost me a lot of CP in rerolls.
Yeah. And then he shot everything else at the one he was in combat with, and he did 3 damage because 3 heavy bolter shots went through, and he has some kind of damage reduction, so that's why instead of 6 damage, it was 3 damage. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for the charge phase, I literally just charged my Rough Riders into his Plague Bearers. I kind of think the Tempesters can kill the one Plague Bringer, or Plague Drone, whatever it is. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I'm going to go for. So hopefully the Rough Riders can clean up these Plague Bearers. Alright, you guys, so for the fight phase, the Rough Riders charged in, and they actually killed, what, 8, or 2, 4, 6 of the...
Plague Bearers.
I guess 8 that were left. They didn't consolidate. That he swung with his Great Unclean one, and finished off the Shadow Sword. Shadow Sword.
Did 18 damage again.
Not explode, which is what I was hoping for. And I didn't have enough command points for any of the stratagems that went along with that. And then, so I swung back with my Militarum, my Tempesta Scions on his Plaguebringer, doing 4 damage, leaving it with 1. Then it swung back and killed 2 of my Scions. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I just had 1 primary, and then I had 3 points for boots on the ground for basically just being scattered across the map. But I didn't get the mission secondary, I didn't get by Lasgun and Bayonet, and I didn't get anything for Inflexible Command, so definitely not a good not a good turn for points.
Alright, and so for movement, I spent 2 of my Warp Storm points to give me Otherworldly Tread, where I'm not affected by any terrain or stuff. For the phase I use it, I can use it in the movement or the charge, and so I use it for movement. So my Great Unclean ones are just moving through this terrain, no problem. In the center, my Plague Bearers completed the action there, so they're moving on to his home objective. They ran. My Nurgling Swarm also completed the objective on the side there. He's fine from line of sight and anything. The Plague Drone that's over there moved down to intercept the Armored Sentinels. The blue Plague Bearers moved up away from all the other threats, so we'll see what happens there. And yeah, and that is the turn. Alright, so for the Psychic phase, the Green Great Unclean one did his +1 damage to a unit, so he gave it to the Great Unclean one up front. Then he cast Smite on the purple squad, went off, killed 2 guys. Then Great Unclean one red cast Nurgle's Rot, which is an AoE within 6 inches, and it failed. I spent my points to re-roll it, and it went off. Basically, I roll 2d6. If it's greater than the highest toughness in a unit, that's a d3 mortal wounds. If it's twice the amount, it's d6 mortal wounds. And for the purple squad and the Commissar, I whiffed hard. I did not roll over a 3. I needed to roll a 4 to do damage to each of them. I failed that entirely. Blue squad, I rolled a 7 up and did 5 mortal wounds, killed half the squad. Then the little Krieg squad that was there, I did successfully roll a 3, so they died. So that was a letdown. And then I smited the Commissar, did 3 mortal wounds to him, and that was it. Alright, so for shooting phase, the Green Great Unclean one has a 12-inch range weapon, his Vomit. He fired that at the purple squad, did a few kills. Then the Red Great Unclean one fired with his Plague. He basically fired everything at the purple squad. So the Plague Flail he has a 7-inch range. That's why the other guy couldn't shoot too much. So it was a d6 plus 3 shots, AP minus 3 at Strength of User. And he just melted the squad. And his Vomit finished them off. And then the Plague Bringer on the bottom right, or the Plague Drone, fired at the Sentinels, did absolutely nothing, and that was the shooting phase. Alright, so my Great Unclean one charged them, so he's still under the effects of the area terrain, so -2. He needed a 5. He failed that hard. And I have nothing to reroll it with. And my Plague Drone on the bottom right charged the Sentinels and made it in. Alright, fight phase. My Plague Drone swings on his Sentinels, does 1 wound. So then he's Tempesters swing on my Plague Drone. The guy with the Power Fist fails entirely, but the other guys do not, and they kill him. And that was the fight phase. Oh, his Sentinel swung back, did 1 wound to kill my guy, and that was it. Alright, so for points, essentially what happens is, I got some more Nourished by Terror. He had a quick morale check, and one guy failed, but that was about it. Reality Rebels, I have the center because of my tree that never died. Spoilers of Reality, I got the middle and right objective thanks to my Nurgling and guys, so 4 points for each of them. I gain a Warp Storm point, but the turn's about to end, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, pretty good. Pulling way ahead now. I controlled 1, controlled 2, controlled more. Oh, and I have Abandoned Sanctuaries for another 2. So yeah. Alright, so we decided to call it there. I mean, there's only 1 turn left, and there was no way that the Imperial Guard could possibly make up back in points, and Nurgle at the very least was guaranteed 8 more points minimum. And despite the fact that my opponent ran out of the clock and shouldn't have been able to play that last turn in its entirety, Nurgle won in the end. So MVP, LVP. So LVP is so obvious for Nurgle. The Beasts of Nurgle showed up, died. That's pretty much it. They got hit with all the Meltas. More specifically, it's the Beasts of Nurgle that charged his Rough Riders. They charged in. They could have killed. They just had to kill like 4 guys, or they actually had to kill 6, but it would have happened. It would have straight up happened. They only had 3 left, and then he had to roll 3 6s. He did. Then the unit survived because of it, and then they slaughtered the Beasts of Nurgle. And then the Beasts of Nurgle up top completely failed to, really survive or do anything. They didn't wipe out the squad despite having all the ability to. So LVP for sure. These guys were essentially reinforcements and bodyguards for the Great Unclean ones, but when they were going to kill a bunch of weak guardsmen, they absolutely failed. And MVP is a hard choice. So Great Unclean ones, when they finally showed up, did a lot of damage. And it wasn't such a big deal that they came in late in the game, because they're so slow moving and their spells are so short range. It would have been at a later game before they could really get into the enemy. And so the deep striking and stuff was the best way to transport them essentially to the enemy. But then the other really close one is the Nurglings. I mean, these guys won me a bunch of points. They held the side. They killed some guys. They Carskin. They killed one of the horsemen. They were very strategically useful, and they helped hold the objectives early. And then finally the tree. The trees suck up so much damage and distracted the enemy for so long, and did allow me to teleport the Great Unclean ones very close because of them. So I'm going to say MVP overall, straight up, is the trees. They took so many volcano cannons, survived. They took so many shots from everything. They sucked up damage that would have been devastating to everyone else because they're 3-up and vulnerable save. These guys were a big deal. They really helped. They were able to successfully deep strike in all my Great Unclean ones within 6 inches of the enemy, and they did an incredible job of sucking up damage, being distractions, blocking enemy movement, deep striking stuff, and they're only 75 points each. So these guys straight up are the strategic and performance-wise MVPs of my game. So what about you?
So I think for me, my LVPs are probably the easiest for me. I think the Catachans and the Tempesters, honestly, they only had, like, the Catachans had 2 flamers. That didn't really do very much here. And the Tempesters, they literally just had las guns and then modified las guns. And so I don't know. Las guns aren't great. They're strength 3. And so, yeah, they can deep strike, but I don't know. They just didn't seem like they were worth it at all. So because they showed up, they didn't do anything. And so I think those points could have easily been spent elsewhere. I mean, I like the idea of the catachans, but I mean, unless there's something I missed in the book, or maybe they require like, I know they have like a character or something. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. MVPs though. Whew. MVPs are kind of a split: the Commissar and the Rough Riders. So I know this isn't an actual Rough Rider model. This is a Death Rider because the Guard models have not caught up yet.
Yeah,
However,
tell that to the Voton, yeah.
So these guys started off on the field, and they literally were able to just fight and kill their way across the map. And so they do a lot of damage, and they gain a lot of attacks just on having successful hits, which is pretty cool. And they also, I don't know, they have a lot of attacks, they do good damage, and so they were actually pretty useful to help clear the right side. Ooh, sorry. And then the Commissar, constantly being able to do both types of infantry orders was super important, but also he kept them from
Running.
what's the word? Taking too many morale losses.
Yeah.
So someone runs, he shoots them, the rest of the people stay. And so that was also pretty beneficial. It helped keep all my melta-guns around. Not that it ended up, doing much. But still, so I would say these two, I guess if I had to say for sure, it'd be the Rough Riders. Would be my absolute MVP, but I think the Commissar really gave them a run for his money just in his buffing ability and staying power. And so that's what I would say, LVPs, MVPs.
Alright, so, game was all done. Overall, what we thought, Arks of Omen made them very interesting because normally you never bring a Feculent Gnarlmaw in because you need to bring a few to really get them in there, but now that the Arks of Omen detachment allows for this to come in easily, surprisingly strategically useful. I know a lot of my army is retardedly slow, and they just can't really move very fast. They're very hemmed in, and so I had to go with trying to play strategy as best as possible and like lure you in and stuff. And so Feculent Gnarlmaws really good, did very, very well, and it really helped with my great Unclean ones being able to show up where they needed to mostly and do lots of damage. So overall, this Nurgle list, very interesting to play, was able to do a lot of good damage. Plague Bearer survived a lot better, so I feel like this was much more strategic, more interesting, more dynamic. Yeah, at least that's what I thought, and man, these trees were tough. They opened up a lot of opportunities, that's it. Even the Rough Riders, you had a massive counter charge which did good damage to you, but they're just so ridiculously offensive with their attacks. So, all right then. What about you? And first time playing the Guard?
I actually really like the Guard. It's kind of hard to tell what works and what doesn't work until you play the army at least once. So a couple of things. So I definitely like the hard thing with the trees is they have a 3-up invul.
Yeah.
And so the problem with that is it either keeps them alive or it doesn't. You just have a bad roll one time and they die off.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately you kept passing those rolls, but I also probably should have stopped targeting them probably around the second turn. So the first turn, whatever, but the second turn I probably should have turned my focus to other things. And probably shouldn't have had I was trying to have it in the terrain, but then I realized the Titanic units don't really benefit from terrain. Or so I thought. But then I started digging through all the rules for Titanic units, and there aren't any in the book. And I don't know where they are. Yeah. I could have swore there were rules for Titanic units, but I can't find any. So
yeah, I have to look that up.
Yeah. So I really like the Guard. I don't understand. Okay, no, I do understand kind of. So they have a bunch of las guns, and you know, the auto wounding on 6s sounds fun or sounds interesting or whatever, but it honestly didn't do very much for me. It was kind of a waste. Now, all their squads could take multiple, like, melta-guns or plasma guns.
Yeah.
And a couple other guns. And so that was pretty cool, but it didn't actually help me at all. It didn't do anything for me.
The problem is you have too few last guns. That was the problem.
I guess I should have. Well, that Shadow Sword was like 450 points, so that would have been easily like, you know.
I did
5
my
or
best
6
to
more.
counterplay him and do my best to leap around him. The trees did wonderful at distracting you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you almost killed a great unclean one. It got really
What I didn't
close.
realize is the turret guns have +1 to their hit roll. So the big volcano lance was actually shooting on 3s, and I didn't know that. So that I don't.
It's
know
hard
if
to
that
pass
actually made a
judgment.
difference. I think he actually rolled a weird amount of 4s for his hit rolls, but again, dealing with so many units with invuln saves, it's kind of like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, he had a lot of damage. He had 4 las cannons, he had 30 heavy bolter shots, and then D3 +3 of that damage 12 gun. Like he had a lot of output, and so I probably could have easily had him as an LVP because he ended up not doing very much, but I think that was more my targeting. But I did like the guard. I think I would do some things differently. I didn't care much for the sentinels, or at least the armored ones. I might try like the regular ones because they can deploy like anywhere. I did not care for the Tempestus Scions. The Rough Riders were really good. I might try 2 squads of 5 as opposed to a full squad of 10. Although that did keep them through the game because there was only like 3 left by the end of it. So, but I did like the Acadians because they had exploding 6s, and with the army roll 6s to wound or 6s to hit auto wounded. And so that was pretty cool. But I think the exploding 6s actually only worked with las guns and las pistols, so that may not have even been relevant. But I did like the guard. I think because with new armies we play, we do them twice. I think I might do something more mechanized next time because they have a buttload of tanks and vehicles, and so I might give those a go and see what that's like.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did like it. I think they definitely are an army that requires characters that can buff. I think that's definitely a big deal for them.
Yeah, I was
So,
surprised you only. I was surprised you only had 3 because normally like a lot of people bring in like 6 or 7 or something because of those miniature commanders and small sergeant commanders and stuff like that to pass all the buffs and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, so they have a bunch of HQ choices. It's just kind of hard to. I couldn't quite in my head put it together like what they actually did and what the point of them was because there's so many of them and you can take bodyguards for them and so that's and then an Inquisitor because I want to try out the Inquisitors.
Yeah.
He was pretty cool. I think it's an interesting thing. So they took away the stratagems from Inquisitors and they took away the what was it? There's something else that
Assassin
they had.
stratagems.
Yeah, so they took away kind of like the group stratagems and kind of made them a little more simple and plug and play. You have an Ordo that they come from, the Inquisitors at least, and they get buffs for fighting against certain unit types or whatever. And so that was kind of cool. He ended up not doing very much, but again, because you were just rolling really well on saves. I mean, that is what it is, but yeah, but no, I definitely like the guard. I think the more infantry you take, the more characters you need. Probably more commissars, honestly, to keep them around and probably focus on. I did not care for the plasma guns. I think plasma cannons are nice, or anything that has multiple damage base for plasma guns, but just the base plasma guns I did not care for. They didn't really do me any good. All the melted guns was nice though.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I actually enjoyed the guard, but I think they're a lot more of a character-heavy army.
Yeah.
At least with infantry, I don't know. I'm gonna mess around with their vehicles and see what that looks like. But yeah, infantry-wise, you need a lot more characters to kind of help navigate. And then las guns are garbage. I hate them. So I don't know if I would try relying on them so much. Because, you know, you hear auto wound on 6s and you're like, oh, that could be something. It is not.
Well,
Not
it
unless
depends
you're
on who you're
like
facing off against.
200 troopers or something.
Well, my Great Unclean ones are toughness 9, so, like, that would work against them.
Sort of. I mean, I guess they have a 4 pin bone, so I guess you do enough numbers on them. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you need to roll a lot of 6s for that. Or maybe just be really lucky. I'm usually not that way with dice, so... yeah, so I like the guard. I thought they were really cool. I think there's a lot of units that they have, and a lot of different commanders and HQs, and so I think there's a lot of different ways to try them out, and so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So I look forward to playing them again.
All right. Well, GG's, GG.